Imagine this. It's 7:13 p.m., dinner's on the stove. One child is yelling about lava. The other refuses to brush her teeth for the third night in a row. You raise your voice. Go brush your teeth. Nothing. Again, louder, because I said so. A door slams. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. The moment is gone. Later that night, you replay it in your mind. You tell yourself you had no choice. You were tired. They were being difficult. But something lingers. Why didn't they listen? And deeper still, why do I feel like I lost something in the process? We've been taught that parenting means staying in control, that obedience equals success, that if your child listens, you're doing it right. But what if that's the very reason they tune you out? What if the more you push, the less they hear? Take a closer look at the words we use when we're stressed. Words that sound normal, even responsible, but quietly break trust, because I said so. It ends the conversation before it begins. To an adult, it sounds authoritative. To a child, it says, "Your thoughts don't matter. Stop asking questions." Now imagine a child who hears that often. Over time, they don't argue. They just stop speaking up. They stop being curious around you. And one day, when you want them to open up, they don't. Or this one, if you don't clean your room, you're not going to the party. It sounds logical, a consequence. But it doesn't teach responsibility. It teaches pressure. They may act, but out of fear, not understanding. Try instead. Once your room is clean, the party's waiting. I believe you can handle it. Now you're still holding a boundary, but you're inviting, not demanding. You're showing belief, not force. And perhaps the most common, stop crying, you're fine. It feels efficient. It helps you get out the door faster. But to a child, it says, your feelings are too much. Over time, they learn to keep emotions inside. They may become quiet, tough, even agreeable, but not safe, not with you, and not with themselves. So we ask, why doesn't my child listen? But the real question is harder. Do they feel safe enough to hear me? Because children don't respond to volume. They respond to connection, to tone, to whether they feel respected in the moment their behavior is being challenged. You're not failing as a parent. But the tools you've been given, many of them were designed for control, not understanding. They're meant to manage behavior, not build trust. And when your child resists not just your words, but your presence, it's not defiance, it's disconnection. Here's the deeper paradox. The more you try to win, the more you lose. The more you press for obedience, the more you push away the very part of your child that wants to connect, to cooperate, to be seen. Because every word you say is doing one of two things. It's either building a bridge or burning one. So pause. Think back to the last moment your child didn't listen. What did you say? And more importantly, what did they hear? Were you guiding or controlling? Correcting or dismissing? Speaking to their behavior or their heart? Because the phrases we've just explored are only the surface. Beneath them is something deeper, a force that runs through every interaction, every instruction, every sigh of frustration or flicker of warmth. It's not just what you say, it's what your child feels when you say it. And that is where everything begins to change. So what's really going on beneath these patterns? Why do we default to language that disconnects? And what does it say about the world we were raised in? Let's go deeper. There's a strange phenomenon in parenting, one that psychologists rarely talk about in textbooks. It's the moment you hear your own voice and realize it's not yours. You say something sharp, impatient, maybe even cruel, and immediately recognize the echo. It's your mother, or your father, or that exhausted teacher from third grade. You didn't mean to say it. You don't even believe it. But it came out anyway, unfiltered, reflexive, familiar. you've become a messenger for a script you never chose but learned by heart. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden part of the psyche that holds the thoughts, emotions, and patterns we've rejected or forgotten. And the shadow doesn't just live in the dark corners of your mind. It lives in your tone, your timing, the tiny moments where stress strips away your better judgment. It appears when your child rolls their eyes, or ignores you, or cries too long in the cereal aisle. You feel that heat rise, that tightening in your chest, the voice that says, "Enough, just do what I say." But that voice? It's not just about your child. It's the echo of how you were once made small. You see, most of us were raised in a system that prioritized compliance over connection, where good behavior meant being quiet, not curious, where emotional control was confused with emotional repression, where respect meant not questioning authority, even if that authority was careless or cold. We were told that love was conditional, that if we behaved, we belonged. But if we pushed back even gently, we became difficult, disrespectful, problem children. And the most dangerous part? We internalized it. We learned to parent ourselves the same way, with judgment, shame, and force. Now we do the same with our children, not because we're cruel, but because we've never seen another way. Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote, "Hell is other people." But for many, hell isn't other people. It's the version of ourselves we become in front of other people, especially the small ones who see everything, because children don't just absorb your rules. They absorb your energy, your fears, your unresolved stories. When you snap, they don't hear you're being loud. They hear, "My needs are too much." When you say, "You know better," they hear, "I'm a disappointment." The surface level behavior you're correcting, that's not the real battle. The real battle is invisible. It lives in the space between your intention and their interpretation. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." But most of us were never taught to live in that space. We were taught to react, to perform, to suppress. So when our children trigger us, that space vanishes. We default to control, not because we're bad parents, but because we're scared. Scared of being disrespected, scared of failing, scared of seeing our own reflection in the chaos. Let's pause here. Ask yourself, why does it bother me so much when my child doesn't listen? Is it because you fear they'll grow up undisciplined? Or is it because a part of you feels ignored, unheard, invisible? Parenting activates the wounds we've hidden. The need for control often masks a desperate need to be seen. And if your child's resistance makes you feel powerless, then you're not fighting them. You're fighting the version of you that was never allowed to have power. This is where Aldous Huxley's warning becomes relevant. He feared not just a society of oppression, but a culture where people would come to love their servitude. A world where we wouldn't question authority, not because we were forced into silence, but because we were trained to believe that silence is love. That's the world many parents were raised in. And now, unknowingly, we risk recreating it for the next generation. Unless we interrupt the script. This is not about guilt. Guilt keeps you stuck. This is about awareness. Because when you start to notice the voice behind the voice, the one that says, "Be good or else," the one that says, "Don't cry," the one that says, "Your worth is tied to your behavior," you begin to reclaim your voice. Not the one that was passed down, the one that chooses differently. Psychologist Reem Rauda describes it as a shift from control to connection, not permissiveness, not chaos, but emotional safety, where boundaries exist, but shame does not, where cooperation is earned through trust, not fear, where authority is rooted in presence, not power. Children don't need perfection. They need attunement. And to be attuned, you have to go inward. not just to manage your child's behavior, but to understand your own. So if your child doesn't listen, ask not, how do I make them comply? Ask instead, what part of me have I abandoned in order to feel in control? Because maybe the answer to why they won't listen is found in the places where you stopped listening to yourself. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when this unspoken pattern goes unchecked, how it shapes not just parenting but identity, how the need to be good can hollow out authenticity, and why your child's silence isn't peace, it's a warning. Let's keep going. You think it's just a phrase. Because I said so, stop crying. If you don't behave, no screen time. But these aren't just empty commands. They're blueprints. Over time, they become the architecture of your child's inner world. Not just how they respond to you, but how they relate to themselves. You don't see the shift happen. It's quiet, gradual, invisible. But one day, your child no longer asks for help, no longer cries in front of you, no longer shares what they're thinking. You think they're maturing, but what you're really seeing is emotional retreat. Here's the hidden truth. The way you speak to your child becomes the way they speak to themselves. You say, you know better. They grow up thinking, I should have known better. I'm stupid. You say, stop being so dramatic. They grow up thinking, my feelings are a problem. You say, how many times do I have to tell you? They grow up thinking, I must be defective if I still don't get it. And even as adults, they'll repeat these same phrases inside their head long after you've forgotten you ever said them. The brain, especially a child's, isn't built to discard language. It's built to absorb and encode it. Neurologically, every time a child feels emotionally unsafe, a primitive alarm system lights up the amygdala. It's the same system that activates during actual physical threats. The brain doesn't differentiate between a tiger in the room and a parent's voice that feels cold or critical. In both cases, the child goes into survival mode. Freeze, fawn, comply, shut down. This is how obedience is often mistaken for success. A child who never argues, who always listens, who knows their place, might actually be a child who's learned that their voice brings conflict, that silence is safer than expression, that pleasing others is the only way to stay connected. It gets more complicated because this pattern doesn't just harm the child, it shapes the parent too. Each time you demand obedience instead of connection, you reinforce the illusion that your worth depends on control. That being respected means never being questioned, that good parenting equals compliance. And so, you become more rigid, less curious. You start confusing authority with self-worth, until one day, your child grows. They begin to form their own identity. They question, push back, speak up, and suddenly you feel unmoored, as if their growth is a threat, as if love is slipping away simply because they've learned to think for themselves. This is how cycles repeat. The parent, once silenced as a child, now silences their own, not out of malice, but out of fear, out of legacy, until someone breaks the chain. Let's look at what happens culturally. We live in a society that rewards performance over presence. Children are praised for grades, medals, neat handwriting, quiet manners, but rarely for vulnerability, for emotional honesty, for asking hard questions. We reward output and punish emotion. So when a child cries, we hush them. When they're angry, we discipline. When they're confused, we correct. All while missing the fact that those moments, the messy, inconvenient ones, are where real connection begins. In adulthood, the consequences crystallize. Children raised in emotionally unsafe environments, no matter how well-meaning, often grow into anxious adults, perfectionists, people pleasers, overthinkers. They become masters of avoiding conflict, even at the cost of truth. They struggle to say no, to ask for what they need, to feel worthy without achievement. They may seem put together on the outside, polite, successful, agreeable. But inside, they're carrying a quiet ache, the feeling that they are only lovable when they're easy. This is where the cultural lie shows itself. That parenting is about molding, shaping, fixing. But children are not clay, they're mirrors. They reflect not only what you say, but what you avoid. They learn not only from your instructions, but from your tone when you're tired, your sigh when they interrupt, your glance when they spill something. And those unspoken moments, they carry weight. A child may forget the rule you taught them, but they will remember how you made them feel when they broke it. Even more hauntingly, when emotional safety is absent, children stop coming to you altogether, not out of rebellion, out of grief. They learn to solve their pain elsewhere, with friends, with distractions, with secrecy, not because they don't trust you, but because they've learned you don't know how to hold them when they're raw. This is not cause for shame. It's a call to awareness. Because here's the most powerful truth of all. It's never too late to become a safe place. You can stop mid-sentence and say, "I didn't mean that. Let me try again." You can look your child in the eye and say, "I see you're hurting. I'm here." You can teach them, not through discipline, but through your own humility, through the courage to evolve in front of them. That's how trust is built, not through authority, but through repair. So if your child doesn't seem to listen, ask yourself, what message has my tone been sending even when my words are right? What has my child learned about emotions from the way I handle my own? What are they afraid I'll do if they tell me the truth? Because listening is not just about ears, it's about safety. And safety is built moment by moment through the small things. In the next section, we'll shift. We've explored the trap. Now we'll explore the way out. The rebellion, not against your child, but against the patterns that raised you. We'll look at radical shifts, surprising tools, and the quiet revolution that begins the moment you speak to your child with intention, not instinct. You're closer than you think. It's a quiet moment. You're folding laundry or driving home from school pickup, and suddenly it hits you. You don't want to repeat the same patterns. You don't want to keep snapping. You don't want your child to flinch when you raise your voice. You don't want to be someone they walk on eggshells around. You just want peace, understanding, respect that flows both ways. But you're not sure where to begin, because no one taught you how to parent this way. Most of us were taught how to enforce rules, not how to build connection. So let's start here with a simple truth. You can't control your child into becoming calm, respectful, or emotionally healthy, but you can guide them toward it by becoming those things yourself. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means you have to be present. Let's walk through 5 things you can start doing today that make a real difference. 1. Slow down before you speak. When your child says no, whines, or pushes back, your body reacts before your brain does. That's normal. But most mistakes happen in that first 2 seconds of frustration, so create space. When you feel that heat rising, try this. Pause. Take 1 deep breath. Then ask yourself, am I speaking from stress or from love? You'll be shocked at how different your tone becomes when you wait even 3 seconds. If you mess it up, don't panic. Say, let me try that again. I want to say this in a better way. That 1 sentence models emotional maturity more than any lecture ever could. 2. Replace control with choices. Instead of demanding, offer choices within boundaries. Children need structure, but they also need a sense of control over their own world. Try this. Instead of "go brush your teeth now," say, "Do you want to brush your teeth before or after pajamas?" Instead of "clean your room or you're not going anywhere," say, "Once your room is clean, we'll head out." You decide when that happens. This shifts the energy from power struggle to partnership. You're not letting go of expectations. You're changing how you invite your child into meeting them. 3. Validate before you correct. This one is hard. We want to fix the behavior first. But when a child feels misunderstood, they're not listening to your words. They're defending themselves. So meet them where they are, emotionally. Try. I can see you're upset. That makes sense. Let's figure this out together. Validation doesn't mean you agree with bad behavior. It means you're acknowledging that their feelings are real even if their actions need to change. Once a child feels seen, their defenses drop. Then, and only then, are they ready to hear you. In the next and final section, we'll bring everything together. You'll see how these small moments, these ordinary choices, add up to something profound. We'll explore the deeper truth beneath it all, that your child's behavior is never the full story, and that how you respond becomes the story they carry for life. Let's finish this. There's a moment, often years later, when your child becomes still. Maybe they're staring out a car window. Maybe they're walking away from your home for the first time, suitcase in hand. Maybe they're telling you about a mistake they made and bracing for your judgment. In that moment, you see them differently, not just as your child, but as a whole person, someone who carries your words inside them, someone whose future will be shaped by what you said when they were small, tired, messy, and full of questions. And the realization hits you, not like a warning, but like a quiet, sacred truth. Your voice becomes their inner voice. That is the final and most powerful truth. The way you speak to your child doesn't just shape how they behave around you. It shapes how they think about themselves when you're no longer in the room. Not just now, but for decades. In their moments of self-doubt, your voice will be the one they hear. In their triumphs, their heartbreaks, their private battles, they'll hear echoes of you. If you often said, "You're too sensitive," they may one day silence their tears, telling themselves to toughen up even when it hurts. If you said, "How many times do I have to tell you?" they may one day question their intelligence when they forget something minor. If you said, "You're fine, get over it," they may one day talk themselves out of seeking help when they're drowning inside. But if you said, "That was hard, I'm proud of how you handled it," they'll learn to give themselves credit. If you said, "It's okay to feel that way," they'll give themselves permission to feel. If you said, "Let's figure this out together," they'll learn that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. This is the legacy most parents never talk about. Not the college fund, not the bedtime stories, not even the rules and consequences, but the emotional blueprint you hand your child through tone, timing, and tiny, forgettable moments. That blueprint becomes the way they handle stress, the way they handle love, the way they handle themselves. And this is where everything we've explored comes full circle. All those moments where your child didn't listen, they were never just about behavior. They were your child asking, "Can you see me even now? Do I matter even when I mess up? Is your love still here even when I'm not easy to raise?" And how you answer through your words, your eyes, your repair, teaches them whether love is safe or something they have to earn. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who are willing to learn, to grow, to say, "I handled that wrong, and I want to do better." Every time you choose calm over control, you're teaching your child they're worth slowing down for. Every time you set a boundary with respect, you're teaching them that limits don't have to come with shame. Every time you listen before you correct, you're showing them that being understood matters more than being right. In the end, your child will remember how you made them feel in their most difficult moments. Did they feel safe? Did they feel seen? Did they feel like they could bring their whole self into the room, even the parts that were messy, emotional, or loud? Because if they did, they'll carry that safety into every room they ever walk into. They'll offer it to their partners, their friends, their future children. Your emotional presence ripples outward, not just for a season, but for generations. That's what it means to be a parent, not to control, not to sculpt, but to guide a soul through the wildness of growth with your steady presence and your human, imperfect love. You are not just raising a child. You are raising a future adult who will remember how it felt to be around you. That memory will live in how they treat themselves when they fail, in whether they believe they're good enough, in whether they come home when things fall apart or hide because they're afraid of your judgment. So ask yourself right now, what kind of voice do I want to become in their mind? One that criticizes, or one that reassures? One that pressures, or one that supports? One that commands, or one that guides? The good news? You don't have to get it right all the time. You just have to be willing to reflect, to repair, to choose connection again when everything inside you wants to shut down or shout. And every time you make that choice, you're building something far more powerful than obedience. You're building trust. So when your child doesn't listen more closely. Not to what they're doing wrong, but to what they're trying to say. Because underneath it all, every child is asking the same question. Am I safe with you? And your answer will echo inside them for the rest of their life. If this message moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments, what did your parents' voice become in your head? And what kind of voice do you want to be for your children? Because it's never too late to change the story. It begins in your next conversation, and in the words you choose to say, or not say, when your child needs you most.